Friends, today we need to talk about the A word, apostasy. I know, it's not a pretty word. Well, quite frankly, it's not a pretty thing. Apostasy, canon law tells us, is the total repudiation of the Christian faith. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Now, why talk about that today? Well, because today I'm reminded of a time that some Mormons came to my door in my house in Lawrence. Now, you might think, oh no, people coming to my door. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. Because I knew a thing or two about the faith back then, even before I was a seminarian. I kind of liked the faith. I studied it. I learned about it. So I was always ready to give a reason for my hope if some Mormons should come to my door. Elder Larson, Elder Waits, shout out to you if you're out there. Me and my buddy Matt Chemnitz were just about to leave and they showed up. And I'm like, come on in, guys. And they wanted to tell me about the great apostasy. Whew, that sounds horrible. Apostasy, bad enough, but a great apostasy? Oh my gosh. Well, here's the deal. They wanted to say that their Mormon faith, well, you see, there was the early Christian faith, and they're all cool with the Bible and everything, but then it just kind of died out because there was this great apostasy. Eventually, the Christian faith that was taught in the Bible, people stopped believing it, and they repudiated the Christian faith, and there just was no authentic Christian faith until, boom, Joseph Smith shows up on the scene in the 19th century. Whew, that's a big apostasy. No wonder they call it the Great Apostasy. Problem is, pretty hard to nail down exactly when this Great Apostasy happened. And so I asked them, like, could you tell me, like, when it happened? And they're like, well, early. I'm like, okay, early. That sounds serious. So we look at the Gospel of John, and I mean, John's cool, right? And that's scripture. And they're like, oh yeah, John is totally, we accept that. Okay, great. And then I'm thinking, and this is why it plays in today, well, did John know anybody that wrote other stuff? Well, today is the feast of Saint Clement. Clement is the fourth pope. We mention him every day in the Eucharistic prayer. There's Peter, of course, the first pope, and then there's Linus Cletus Clement, that big name of popes that you never stop to think about. Today, we would actually bow our heads at the name of Clement because it's his feast day. Well, Clement, you see, was probably ordained by Peter himself. And so we have some writings. He wrote to those Corinthian people, the same people that Paul wrote to. Yeah, later Clement wrote to them too. The thing is, Clement says a lot of the same stuff that Peter said, that John said, that Paul said. So I talked to my Mormon friends. I'm like, okay, so there's no apostasy by the time of Clement, right? Because he's writing the same stuff. Like, yeah, well, okay, Clement dies in about the year 99, so we're almost into the 2nd century. All right, so there's no apostasy yet by the time of Clement. Well, okay, what about, Ignatius of Antioch? He's actually probably buddies, maybe knew Clement. Probably, he writes the same stuff too. Ignatius of Antioch, he's writing, and he writes stuff to the Magnesians. Who even knew about the Magnesians? I don't. But the thing is, Ignatius wrote the same stuff that, well, the person that he learned from, St. John, wrote. Talk about St. John. Well, he also had another disciple, Polycarp. Well, then, Polycarp. You even heard about Polycarp? Yeah, Polycarp's a pretty big deal because, well, he wrote the same things that St. John wrote, and Polycarp is getting pretty on into the 1st, 2nd century. Well, so there's no apostasy yet by the time of Polycarp, right? Right. Mormon friends agree. No apostasy by the time of Polycarp. Okay, well, the problem then is Polycarp teaches Irenaeus. Irenaeus has got a pretty cool name and everything. It means peace. Yeah, who wouldn't love peace? Well, I do. And the thing is, Polycarp teaches Ignatius, and Ignatius, what do you know? He writes the same crazy kind of stuff that John wrote, that Polycarp wrote, that now Ignatius is writing. And you know what? Ignatius gets us into the 3rd century. And he's writing the same kind of crazy stuff that the Catholic Church still talks about today. So I asked my Mormon friends, no apostasy by the time of Ignatius then, right? Well, no. Okay, cool. Well, but then eventually we get into the 4th century, and the Council of Nicaea is teaching the same thing. So clearly no apostasy by the 4th century. No apostasy by the 4th century. And the problem here is when you say that there was a great apostasy, and I admit with my Mormon friends, if you're going to get to Mormonism, you got to have this great apostasy. There's got to be some time where everyone falls away, because if you're going to refound a new church that you say is on the Bible, you got to eliminate everything that came in between. There has to be some great apostasy so you can refound something new based on something totally different. Here's the problem. Really hard to nail down that time when the great apostasy happened. Okay, so here's the other A word you need to know today. Apostolic Fathers. St. Clement, the fourth pope, the third successor of St. Peter that we celebrate today, he is considered to be the first of the Apostolic Fathers. You know, these are the people who wrote, who knew the apostles, who are apostolic men themselves, or knew the apostles, or in their communities. They write stuff too. It's not in the Bible, but they wrote stuff. Well, we read their stuff, and it sounds a heck of a lot like what the Catholic Church taught then and teaches today. Here's the little secret. There was never a great apostasy. Ever. Because this is what Jesus promised. I promised, Peter, you are the rock. I'll build a church, an ecclesia upon this, and the gates of hell will never prevail against it. And the gates of hell have never prevailed against the church, despite many unworthy popes, many unworthy bishops, despite the time of Arius in the 4th century, where half the world's bishops were heretics. That's another bad word. Not as bad as apostasy, but still bad. And yet, the true teaching of the faith has been handed down from the time of the apostles without blemish. That's pretty awesome. It also rules out things like Mormonism and other non-Christian sects who want to refound things based not on apostolic traditions, but on the convenience of time, and not apostolic men, but 19th century men. I wouldn't want to follow a group like that. I want to set my faith firm upon the apostolic foundation, not just what's in Scripture, but also taught by apostolic men, the Apostolic Fathers, like St. Clement, Pope St. Clement, who we celebrate today, and we remember all his good little buddies like Ignatius, Polycarp, all those other cool men who lived, Irenaeus. Yeah, they wrote stuff. You could probably read their stuff. But even if you don't read their stuff, know that if anyone talks to you about a great apostasy, not a nice word, I know, it's not a nice thing, there wasn't one. Never was. So let that be your peace today, your Irenaeus. Go read the Apostolic Fathers today, or even if you don't, just know that they exist, and that means there can't be a great apostasy. God bless the beginning of your week.